2 decades of a carefully negotiated, precarious royal peace were sealed off as the doors to Clarence House's private study slammed shut. A few hours after King Charles approved a historic proclamation that ensured the royal future and legal, Queen Camilla left the room in utter shock at Prince Louis's title position as his youngest grandson. Anger that had been gradually developing behind closed doors for months permeated the oppressive mood inside the palace. However, this wasn't simply a light-hearted family argument over dynamic roles in the home or public appearances. It was explosive, high-stakes conflict that directly targeted the British monarchy's long-standing, uncompromising core, the absolute, non-negotiable split between the step-family and royal bloodline. To see why a straightforward signature from, you must pay special attention to what was truly mentioned on that legal paper, because the monarch created such a catastrophic rift inside the royal walls. Buckingham Palace and the Prince of Wales' office had been having private discussions for months. There were increasing concerns about how the younger royal offspring would fit into the grand destiny of the crown, as King Charles deliberately streamlined the monarchy and reduced wasteful spending. At the age of 8, Prince Louis has already established himself as an unquestionable global icon, winning over millions of admirers with his unplanned, incredibly expressive personality. However, under the old letters patent established by King George V more than a century ago, non-inheriting royal children's long-term financial security and hereditary title guarantees were frequently ambiguous until adulthood. With the razor-sharp vision of a future monarch, Prince William refused to let fate determine the fate of his youngest son. Ignoring the private and avoiding the typical palace bureaucracy, William personally set up a number of private legal changes in response to concerns that were circulating among Queen Camilla's inner circle. These records did more than only confirm Louis's royal status. They formally assigned a particular, historically significant royal title, a piece of land reserved especially for Louis upon reaching adulthood, ensuring his lifetime elevated standing inside the crown's institutional framework. Prince Louis's future was sealed in stone when King Charles put his royal seal on those documents. However, that royal seal was a heartbreaking personal smack in the face for Queen Camilla. Since her marriage to Charles in 2005, Camilla has carried a quiet, unwavering ambition about her own life for more than 20 years. Literally Laura Lopez and Tom Parker BS and her 5 grandchildren Lola, Freddie, Gus and Louis, Eliza and Lopez. As the world observed Camilla's transformation from Britain's most hated woman to queen. As a consort, she was always working in the background to get her own family a formal position in the royal family. She didn't think they would hold the crown or have heavy diplomatic responsibilities, but she had a strong, unspoken hope that her blood kin will eventually receive titles, official royal acknowledgement, or at the very least, long-term financial stability supported by royal juice riches. In May 2023, Camilla was formally crowned by King Charles at Westminster Abbey, and her grandchildren received, standing there on the famous balcony in important roles as pages of honor. For Camilla, that instant felt like the start of a new era, one in which her family would at last be incorporated into the monarchy's institutional fabric. However, the harsh, uncompromising reality of royal law was just around the corner. Prince William was the one who ensured that barrier was never violated. During a heated closed-door or evening discussion at Clarence House, the tension finally erupted. Sources near the home showed that Camilla had gone straight to King Charles and made a formal plea on behalf of her oldest grandchild, Freddie Parker BS, who is about to become a teenager. Camilla maintained that her grandchildren should have formal estate arrangements, minor aristocratic titles, or official acknowledgement in order to preserve their public standing, given her position as queen consort. She emphasized her enormous public responsibilities and her unwavering devotion. She had demonstrated to Charles the sacrifices her family had made over the previous 30 years due to media attention. She felt that her family had a permanent place at the royal table because of her allegiance. Sitting behind his dark, surrounded by centuries of royal history, he sat at a mahogany desk and listened to his wife's argument in solemn quiet. However, Charles's oldest son and most reliable advisors presented him with the legal facts before he could even consider her demands. The reaction was harsh, quick, and completely unyielding. King Charles turned to face Camilla and told her the truth, and, in one breath, destroyed her expectations. The sovereign's lineage is the exclusive owner of royal titles, inherited land rights, and state protection. No matter how devoted they may be, stepchildren and other secondary family members should not receive them as rewards. It was impossible to overlook the sharp, brutal contrast. Prince Louis, a kid born straight into the royal lineage and supported by the future King of England, was seated on one side of the ledger. He carried the official lineage of Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana. Camilla's grandchildren, who are private individuals with no formal claim to the British monarchy despite their close relationship to the Queen, were seated on the opposite side. When word got out about Charles's final order regarding Prince Louis, palace insiders characterized the response as an outburst of pure frustration in Camilla's private rooms. Camilla came to understand that, even though she was wearing the crown and had the title of Queen Consort, her authority within the palace was limited. After rising to the top of the British class hierarchy for 20 years, she was reminded in one evening that her own lineage would always be on the outside looking in. The conflict did not remain limited to modest disagreements while studying alone. Almost overnight, the atmosphere at family get-togethers turned icy. The Prince of Wales and his stepmother became clearly divided as a result of Prince William's unyielding position on the issue. The future of his children and the legacy of his mother have always been William's top priorities. Early on, he realized that granting official titles or institutional benefits to Camilla's non-royal kin would weaken the monarchy's credibility at a time when the public is calling for openness and a smaller royal footprint. During a high-level briefing with royal officials, William was very clear about his opinion. Because Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis represent the immediate future of the country's legacy, the British populace will accept them. However, the public will never accept the use of royal duchy funds or tax monies to elevate a dotty aristocratic privilege from a non-blood step family. William's reasoning was unquestionable, and King Charles was aware that his oldest son was completely correct. When word leaked through senior royal channels that Prince Louis had been awarded the title, the entire household started to experience emotional consequences. The title guarantee is more than simply a future document to little Prince Louis. It symbolizes his official position as a pillar of the contemporary royal family. Louise, William and Catherine's youngest child, has demonstrated a special degree of worldwide love. He is one of the royal family's most potent public relations assets because of his impulsive outbursts on palace balconies, his joyful energy at public pageants, and his light-hearted interactions with his grandfather. The youngest grandson of King Charles is adored. The close, loving relationship between the king and Prince Louis has long been seen by observers' warmth that, in his own stiff upbringing, Charles seldom encountered. Charles sees the bright, promising future of the House of Windsor when he looks at Louis. Charles had more than simply a legal obligation to protect Louis's titles and financial base. It was a remarkable act of love from a granddad. However, Camilla was constantly reminded of what her own grandchildren would never have by that same devotion. For Camilla, the situation is tragic because of the delusion of power. For many years, people believed that as Queen Camilla, the king's consort, had considerable influence over his final choices. And she definitely does in a lot of personal areas. Through the worst storms of his life, she has served as his steadfast partner, confidant, and emotional support system. However, the monarchy functions like a cold, heartless machine when it comes to the legal constitutional mechanics of the crown. It doesn't care about decades of allegiance, personal sentiments, or the complexities of a stepfamily. Its only concerns are institutional survival, bloodline validity, and continuity. Camilla came to the realization that her grandson would continue to be plain Master Freddie Parker BS, whereas Prince Louis, who was 8 years old, was. The emotional gap between her and the core royal family grew as she was formally bestowed with an iconic royal title and historic estate guarantees. Witnesses inside Clarence House claim to have seen Camilla withdraw to her Wiltshire private home, Ray Mill House, because it is the only area in which she is totally autonomous of the royal apparatus. She preserved the property exclusively in her own name. The King's office and the Queen's administrative team remained silent for days after the altercation. Tangible. Employees were cautious not to discuss future estate planning, title distributions, or royal decrees while Camilla was present. The realization had sunk in. Regardless of how far Camilla rose, the future of Prince William, Catherine, and their 3 children are the only members of the British monarchy. This change in authority marks a significant historical turning point in the palace's internal hierarchy. For many years, Camilla had been successful in placing her family near the epicenter of royal life. Tom, her son, became a regular analyst of royal culture and gastronomy. High-profile royal events were attended by her daughter Laura, and her official family photos frequently included grandchildren. From the outside, it looked like a smooth, contemporary, blended family had been produced within Windsor's historic walls. However, beneath that meticulously constructed public facade was a violent power struggle that was bound to blow up. The two most practical and protective members of the royal family, Prince William and Princess Anne, had been closely monitoring Camilla's family's gradual infiltration into royal life. William had the full support of Princess Anne, who was renowned for her uncomplicated demeanor and fierce devotion to the customs of the monarchy. Anne reminded the king that the monarchy has endured for more than a millennium because it upholds distinct, strict limits on formal titles and royal succession. Anne noted that a significant public outcry would result from extending royal titles to step-grandchildren, exposing the family to charges of favoritism. During a period when the monarchy's finances are being closely examined, King Charles was shown an overwhelmingly unified front. As Anne and William stood side by side, he had to decide whether to support his wife's personal goals or uphold the institutional integrity supported by his heir and sister. The crown was chosen by Charles. The choice was final, unchangeable, and absolute. Sealed beneath the Great Seal of the realm, the legal documents guaranteeing Prince Louis's future title were legally entered into the confidential royal archives. At the age of 8, Prince Louis was formally assured of his place in history, with the title of Prince awaiting adulthood with devoted royal heritage assets. Camilla's family, however, was completely isolated and firmly classified as private residents who will abet no official institutional standing, no royal titles, and no public funding. The heated dispute, even though Clarence House is no longer open, the icy reality of that choice will reverberate across the palace's corridors for decades to come. While Prince William and Catherine are still getting ready to take the throne, everyone in the royal household receives a strong, unambiguous message from the decisive triumph over the title structures. Step-family politics and personal favors will not jeopardize the future of the British monarchy. It is going to be lean, laser-focused, and passionately loyal to its real lineage. Prince Louis stands for the audacious, colorful future of that lineage, a young prince whose position in the nation's history is now set in stone. Additionally, the country observes 3 generations of blood royals, the king, while Queen Camilla must accept the rigid boundaries of her royal power. Together, Charles, Prince William, and infant Prince Louis seal the future of the monarchy with unflinching power. The world was shown one last indisputable fact by the fallout within Clarence House. It is possible to marry into the royal family. You are able to sit on the throne next to the king and wear the historic crowns. However, the bloodline always prevails after the legal ledger is closed. Its heritage is not shared by the crown. Additionally, Prince Louis's everyone inside the royal gates can clearly see the reality thanks to the unquestionable victory over palace politics.